afternoon, evening, everyone, for those who are watching a recording session later today. Welcome to our session. This session is Beyond Community Impact, Cradle-to-Career Outcomes. Next slide, please. My name is Luisiana Gamboa. My preferred pronouns are she and her, and I'm an advisor for food security with Save the Children at US program. During this session, we have three Save the Children staff who will share about the impact on the children's education outcomes through early learning and elementary age programs. We also have two staff members from C5 who will highlight the successes of the holistic approach through community needs assessment, engagement, and the establishment of common goals and commitments. Next slide, please. Okay, it is my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, my colleague, Chelsea Gifford. Currently, Chelsea provides programmatic support around community work to improve kindergarten readiness, third grade reading, proficiency in rural communities. She's an advisor for community engagement with Save the Children US. Please join me in welcoming Chelsea Gifford. Thank you.
Thank you, Louisiana. And I'm really excited to be here today with all of you to talk a little bit about the community work that we're doing specifically in Cocke County, Tennessee. But I'm here mainly to give you just a little bit of an overview of what collective impact work is looking like nationally. So we're doing a lot of work across the country with different coalitions to support some of the community's efforts around a specific target result. So my position as the national advisor, I'm more behind the scenes, kind of taking lessons learned from what these coalitions are doing on the ground and trying to develop and design new trainings that might support some of the work that they're doing within their communities. So I'm touching base regularly with Tennessee, but also nationwide to find out what's happening and make sure that we're providing the best support possible to strengthen that support for the CI work. So if you look at the next slide, just to give everybody a bit of an overview of what that kind of looks like when we're talking about broad collective impact, what does that even mean? So if you follow me along this pathway, we're looking at coalition groups, which is a group of cross-sector community members that are working together on community level results that are specifically around children and families from cradle to career. So they begin with a deep focus on kindergarten readiness and third grade reading proficiency. And they're establishing those local partnerships to develop leaders and provide accelerator funds for conducting results-based action planning and strategy implementation to achieve and sustain progress for children. So that's a mouthful and it's a lot to say, but it all comes with a lot of work and a lot of intentional thinking with local leaders. So they start by looking at the population as a whole and saying, what can we begin with? And again, Save the Children obviously has a deep investment in that early learning. And so a lot of times we're thinking about kindergarten readiness or we're thinking about third grade reading. And so we're looking at why, what's the data around that? Where are the students struggling the most? And what can we do to support that learning and support those families who are helping their children learn at home? So they're setting up and then moving over to what are the priorities in mind? What can that coalition group do to support that population level result? And so they're identifying what the areas are that they're lacking. So is it a lack of awareness? Is it a lack of opportunities for nutrition food, which is of course the reason why we're all here today, to kind of talk about that food security element? Or is it a lack of maybe parent involvement or skill building in that area? So identifying what those points are that coalition can work to help. And so from there, they're developing strategies. And so those strategies are there to kind of lead where they go for that next duration of when they're meeting and what they're putting into their action commitments and how they're designing some of these initiatives to help support the work that's happening in the community. and making sure that they're also in alignment with all of the other various Save the Children programs that might be offered within a community, because there are a lot, just to throw out their early steps. And then of course the food security program. How can we all work together to make sure that parents know that there's plenty of opportunity out there and that you can find it within their own community. And so then from there, they're taking any of those initiatives that were developed and looking back and saying, was it effective? Are people more aware? Are we moving to a more results focused area where they're actually making improvements and seeing some impact? Or do we need to go back? And that's why the pathway kind of works in a circle, because all the time we're having to look back and decide, are our efforts focused in the right areas, and where do we need to start and maybe add on a new initiative and deepen our impact throughout this work. So it's ongoing. Collective impact is definitely nothing that you can check off a list and say we're done and we've achieved everything. It is definitely a reflection and a continuous effort to improve community. So we can go to the next slide, please. And just to sum it all up, because I know you'll want to hear so much more from the people that are on the ground and doing this awesome work, but just to kind of put it into perspective of what we're looking at, if local leaders are developing a strong coalition and they're engaging investors, they're engaging the community, they're making sure they're developing strong strategies, they then will achieve some long-term sustainable change in population level results. And around those areas that I mentioned, we're hoping that that's the impact that we're leaving when we're forming these coalitions locally. So I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Michelle Smith, and she's going to talk to you a little bit more about what's happening in Cocke County.
Thanks, Chelsea. Hi, everyone. As you all heard, my name is Michelle Smith. I am the state advisor for Tennessee around our community approaches work. That work includes the collective impact work that Chelsea was speaking about, our community impact approach overall, and our food security work across the state, which Crystal Chambers supports until she'll tell you a little bit more. So if you can go to the next slide, please. I'm going to speak to you specifically about Tennessee's vision to this collective impact approach and how it is affecting one county specifically in Tennessee, and that's Cocke County. So the Cocke County Cradle-to-Career Coalition was launched in May of 2019. They have an incredible, well-established executive table built of those community partners that are all working together, making sure that they are searching for that data and really going through that pathway that Chelsea spoke about. They work together to make sure that all of their efforts are aligned, and we have seen amazing results. I was actually just at a stakeholder meeting in Cocke County, and we spoke about this, that for the first couple of years, this collective impact work looked like nothing. And then it looked like everything, because you're building that roots system, and the team there on the ground has done an incredible job. You'll see here they have 4 results. You heard it right, 4 results that they are actively working on in their community. They're working on a result that all children will enter kindergarten ready to learn. All children will exit 3rd grade reading on grade level. All students will graduate from high school as ready graduates. And all struggling households in Cocke County will replace the experience of food insecurity with food independence, which we'll speak a little bit about in the future. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about this approach and just the work that we do within Save the Children in Tennessee. So the counties that we support in Tennessee, we base what we provide on what their needs are. So in Cocke County, we actually have our full suite of support structures that we offer in Tennessee. That ranges from our early child care coordinators offering our early steps to school success home visiting group. It has our kindergarten readiness support that is provided through the Cocke County Cradle-to-Career Coalition, our in-school whole school process, which is called the READ project, Reading Everywhere and Daily, and that is for our 3rd grade students. And then we also have our after-school programming and our community work as a whole. So there's a lot of really great work that's happening there specifically in Cocke County. And if you can go to the next slide. I just wanted to show what that looks like as a number. So in 2022 to 2023, 1 year of programming in Cocke County, Save the Children was able to invest $1.7 million. That included the hiring of and employment of the staff that you see listed below. In addition, we were able to, with the help of our local partners, or sorry, not our local partners, our national partners, we were able to get over 100,000 items donated and distributed out into the community. So on top of this financial investment from Save the Children, we have incredible investment at the local level that both Nicole and Jennifer will speak on a little bit later. But I just wanted to highlight the investment that Save the Children has in Cocke County. And the reason why we're invested there is because there is work that's happening. It's strong, it's valuable, and we are seeing the fruits of that labor. So I'm going to pass it on over to Crystal Chambers, and she can tell you a little bit more about the community work specifically around food security. So next slide, please.
So I'm Crystal Chambers, as Michelle just told you. Thank you. Food Security Lead Associate for Tennessee, Save the Children. Some of the work that we do here across the state, we work with our food pantries, of course, distributions, nonprofits, the Boys and Girls Club, mobile units, summer feeding groups, anybody that distributes food. We try to make a connection because we want to be partners with those organizations. We want to make those connections so that we can work hand in hand together, so we're not duplicating the work, but we're also reaching larger numbers and being able to help those in the community more. We've even working with the milk bank, and that's something you wouldn't think maybe possibly about falling in food security, but it totally falls into food security. So that was something that's a passion of mine. But we're here today, we're going to talk about Jennifer and Nicole, who are from Cocke County, and they are going to be talking about C5. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about them. Jennifer Ellison, she is the Collective Impact Lead Director for the Cocke County Cradle-to-Career Coalition, also known as C5. That's a lot easier, which is located in Newport. C5 works across many sectors in the community to improve educational outcomes for Cocke County's children. Since beginning this role in 2021, Jennifer facilitates collaboration among community partners looking to shift results in kindergarten readiness, third grade literacy, college and career readiness, and food security. You can see that her job covers a wide gamut. Nicole Howard will also be speaking today, and she currently works with Strong Families, community family partner. For over a year, she served as the food security coordinator for the Cocke County Cradle-to-Career Coalition, located in Newport. And Nicole works across many sectors to improve food insecurity in the community of Cocke County. Nicole works closely with various food pantries, food banks, and the school system to make sure no family or children are struggling with hunger. So now, without further delay, I present to you Jennifer Ellison.
Hey, good afternoon. Crystal stole my thunder. I was all prepared to introduce myself, and she did such a magnificent job. But it is really hard to describe what I do in this role because sometimes it looks like everything, and sometimes, like Michelle said, it looks like nothing, because it's a lot of convening meetings, it's a lot of facilitation, and it's a lot of communication. But as you can see, all of those are necessary to do what it is we're trying to do. Next slide, please, Chelsea. So the way that all this work got started is we believe everything has to begin with that shared agenda. Several of us looked around, and it all boils down to that we all agree there's a problem, and that it's up to all of us to work together in order to solve it or have an impact on this problem. And in Cocke County, with C5, our focus was education. But through that, we realized that our children, especially during the pandemic, that when they were missing that meal at school or having that planned place to be, that sometimes their nutritional needs were not being met. And so that's when C5 stepped up and said, hey, kindergarten readiness is important and third grade reading is important. But if these families are struggling to get the food they need, then they're not worried about learning. They're worried about surviving. So we all gathered and we said, hey, this is where we are. And so looking at specifics, about 20% of Cocke County's children under 18 are considered food insecure by the USDA definition. And about 45% of the children in Cocke County are eligible for SNAP benefits. So we have a huge need in this community. But we didn't want to just stop there. We wanted to discover what the community needed. We don't want to assume that we have the answer for the problem. So Nicole and I got together. This was right when she was first hired. And through an amazing subgroup of our food security working group, which was convened by school leaders, business leaders, pantry, nonprofits, schools. We all sat down and said, what do we want to know? What will help us make decisions about our community and what the community needs to help pull out of this problem with food insecurity? And we had an amazing response. I think we had 500 survey responses, which feels small, but is incredible in a county of only about 35,000 people. So we were really excited to take the results from that and move to the next step, which is using this abundance of data, because everything needs to be pinpointed by data, to plan, to do something, to study it, see what's working, what's not working, and make a shift. And I am so thrilled to share with you the pictures, which is one of our projects called the Garden of Eden. It is a community teaching garden that is the collaborative effort of not only C5, but 6 other community organizations. That's right, 6 people sat down, worked on a grant together, and were able to implement this project. And so this is a community garden that has 10 different raised beds. We have different events to talk about what's being planted there. C5 does literacy events. We have volunteers. You can see in the picture in the bottom right, one of our volunteers is reading to a child. We have a little free library in the garden that has garden themed books. It has recipe books for anyone to take free of charge. And then on the bottom left, we have a little boy working with one of our extension agent partners, actually constructing the beds. We had volunteers from the community a part of this every step of the way, because we wanted their input, we wanted their support, and we wanted it to feel like it was theirs as much as it was ours. And then in the very top picture, we have these amazing gentlemen that were part of a jail kind of a transition program. It's new to our community. They were amazing partners. They benefited a lot. They live in kind of a transitional housing. And so we were able to supply them with a lot of fruits and vegetables for their program in return for their help in the garden. And then that very bottom picture is the harvest from just one day. It was one community work day. So lots of great things happening, and none of it possible without this partnership between agencies, the ability to talk to each other, share ideas, and work together instead of trying to compete for resources. And I will next slide pass it over to my fantastic colleague, Nicole Howard.
Good afternoon. As Jennifer just said, my name is Nicole Howard. I am currently with Strong Families. I'm a community family partner, so I'm still heavily involved in food insecurity in Cocke County. I also work on other aspects that families are dealing with. I work with families in poverty. So I'm still kind of doing what I was doing, but beginning in January 2020, I started with C5 as a food security coordinator. I led the working group through building, implementing community assessment, identifying partners, building relationships. And when I say relationships, those were hard to build. I worked very hard because each independent one wants to act on their own silo. And to make a difference in food insecurity in Cocke County, we don't want them to act as their own silo. We want everybody to work together to serve one purpose. And that purpose, building relationships and working together. So that's what I worked on, and that's what I did. I can say I accomplished that. So amazing partnerships were developed, amazing things. We have many, many community partnerships, and I just wanted to name a few that I brought together to work together. Second Harvest Food Bank is really huge in our community, and I have worked with them on many occasions. I've worked with the libraries, the school system, food pantries, volunteers, the Boys and Girls Club. So all those became one big, strong family. So that's pretty amazing. I do want to touch on one thing that we did to maximize impact of our children in Cocke County and food insecurity is that I partnered with Second Harvest on a program called the Good Eatin' Cooking Club. And what we did was we went into the schools and we cooked with the children. We taught them things that they could make at home without actually having to use an oven. So many kids are home alone while parents are trying to work and survive. And so those kids needed the tools and to learn what they could make on their own at home without actually having to use an oven. So we went in to all county schools except two, just because they were new to the after school program. But we went into all those, and we went into the libraries here and provided it to not just schools, but also public in general. So your home, we hit our homeschool kids also. So that Good Eatin' Cooking Club, Second Harvest came in, they gave the classes for free, and each child left and went home with everything that we cooked and made that day. They went home with all the tools and ingredients to then teach their family what they had learned. And then hopefully, if that's something they would need to cook later on down the line, they could and it was also a nutritious meal because they all need nutrition. So next slide, please. I talked about our community partnerships. I'm going to talk a little bit now about how we maximize the impact. So maximize impact by working together to bring resources. And I'm going to give you an example of something Cocke County has done. So the Cocke County school system has a family resource center. That family resource center gives out food to children that need it at any time. She told me during one of my first initial visits that they didn't have access to bread. So I worked with another partner, Bobby Food Pantry, and it's a community food pantry. And they said, we have all the bread they could want. So I then come back to the family resource and I was like, hey, anytime you need bread, I can get it. So that contact was made. So now the school system has bread available for anything. So that was just an example of bringing those silos together to work together. So also bringing food education is big. A lot of kids are not taught nutrition. They are not taught to eat healthy. And in order to thrive and get them where they need to be, they need nutritious foods. So that's huge. Also, I want to talk about something else that worked for us and is a big deal to people here. People still ask me for it daily when I'm out and about, is I made a food resource guide for the county. It has everything on that food resource guide of everywhere they can go any day of the week to receive food and free assistance. And it also has where they can go and get a hot meal every single day. So they know where to go get hot meals. They know where to get food for the week. They know what days, what times those are all open. And with that, we did an additional step and created a map. So we have an online map, and you can go and access that map. And on that map, it will tell them what's the closest to their home, because transportation is the #1 issue here. So this map will direct them to the closest place to their home to where they can go and get food when needed. So big, huge win for Cocke County on that. As far as changing the mental models, we need to create permanent solutions, because a lot of times it's a temporary fix and then they're hungry again, right? So we need to create permanent solutions. And food security is more than just being without food. It's so much more than just being without food. Financial budgeting, learning to cook with what they've got, teaching our children how to cook with what they've got, using things they get at the food pantries that they don't know how to cook with. Maybe they've never ate a certain type of bean, teaching them how to incorporate that in maybe a soup, just giving them different recipes in different ways. So that's what I mean when I'm talking about changing mental models, changing that mindset of using what we have. So that's amazing. And then teaching kids to cook their own foods at home is huge. And anything you do can make a difference. And I try to tell all my people, maybe carpooling to non-transportation households to receive food. Many things that I've worked with on all these sectors across the county, and it's all come together, and I see it changing slowly but surely. And I want to say good job, and Save the Children is such a blessing to be able to allow food security to be in this county. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nicole. That was wonderful. So if you all, the audience, have any questions that you would like to ask to our speakers, feel free to put it on the chat, on the Q&A chat. Okay. I have the first one for Food Security Lead Associate. So that's Crystal Chambers. Thank you, Crystal. So from your perspective as a Food Security Lead Associate, how does food security look specifically in Cocke County, Tennessee?
The thing that I think stands out about food security work is the connections that are made. And I think that's very important because, as Nicole stated, there are many different pantries and distributions or banks that are happening, but people can't get to all of them, or people can't get to even the closest one to them. So if they're sharing resources and sharing the information with one another and working together hand in hand, I think that's the most valuable piece that needs to happen. And that would be anywhere. I mean, I think across the state, food security needs to connect because, necessarily what we're doing here in Cocke County, it can happen with the county next door. If they have needs that we can't meet here, we could partner together and help one another. And I think if we could create that network across the state, similar to what's happening in Cocke County, I think it would benefit our entire state.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Crystal, for sharing your perspective. So Chelsea Gifford, we do have a question. You talk about the collective impact work. So would you tell us a little bit more about the long-term impact in the families with children?
Thank you, Louisiana. So I think what we're looking at, of course, collective impact, all of the community work in general for Save the Children is fairly new in the terms of how long our communities have been implementing this. Amazing how much they've been able to do in that period of time. And so it's ever going, and we're trying to learn from all of these different experiences. But what we've learned from some of our partner organizations who have been doing this type of work for decades is that in the long term, we would love to see some of these different initiatives that are started providing some deep systemic type changes. So whatever they're learning from these initiatives that are happening, I mean, that community garden, that's so sustainable that you've got a lot of communities members involved in the work in that. It's accessible. Things like that, we want to take those lessons and then apply it to show whoever the constituents are, policymakers, like, hey, this stuff works. What can we do to get more funding involved for around food security? Or what can we do to make it so that everyone has access to fresh fruits and vegetables? What needs to be in place to do that? So I think in the long term, we want those coalitions to be continuing to think about how they can deepen some of the impact that they're already doing. Because like I said, I think it's an ongoing process, but I think the more those groups mature, the more they're going to find out that those successes and wins will come to them through that action commitment and through those strategic planning methods. So those are our goals, and we know it's going to work, especially when we see examples like this, where everybody is working so seamlessly together.
I will say that Newport Cocke County is a perfect example of how each organization works together to make it work. That's simply put, they all come together and each contribute their part to make it work. And I don't mean this the way it sounds probably, but if Cocke County can do that, think what we can do if we are able to do the same thing in other counties. I think that would be great.
I agree, Crystal. And I know Jennifer offhandedly said that no big deal. I do a lot of convening and doing meetings, but that stuff is so meaningful. I mean, that's the root of getting all of this work accomplished, is actually getting people to the table and aligning them with the same common agenda and vision. And it's just a perfect example of what can come with that. So completely agree, Crystal.
Thank you all. I do have a question for Michelle. You mentioned a lot of creativity, trying different things. I see you all have a big impact, combine those community activities with food security. And so can you tell us a little bit about the creative ways you support as the community approaches advisor for Tennessee?
Absolutely. Thanks, Luciana. So I'm really fortunate to have an incredible statewide team that works very, very closely with our local partner staff. The way our system works is we have our Save the Children employed staff that are remote and spread out across the state, but the local people on the ground that are doing the work, they are actually employees of the Cocke County Partnership. So they live in that community, they know that community. So the way those decisions are made, those activities and strategies are made, they're made by community members. One of the things that I think makes this work so impactful is I'm not walking into someone's community and saying, listen, have I got a great idea for you? This is what's broken in your community. And look, I have a magic wand and I will now wave it. And now all things are fixed in your community. I would be shooed out of that community, and rightly so. But when we walk in, we say, we want to bring together all of the people in this community that want to see change happen and are willing to put on that hat. And then we hire local people to help facilitate that work, to convene those meetings and make those connections. Some of the creative things that we've seen, and really that outside of the box thinking, has been specifically around breaking down silos. Cocke County has done an incredible job of this. And one of the examples that comes to mind for me specifically is the roundtable group meeting that has now started happening since January of this year. Jennifer worked really, really closely with many nonprofits and government entities that were there in the local area. And they just realized that a lot of the things that they were working on were things that they ended up kind of duplicating over each other. They were working in silos and not able to serve in the same way as they would have otherwise. So by being able to have a monthly meeting where all of these different entities come together and meet together, with Jennifer facilitating that, they're able to break down those silos and really get to the heart of issues. One of the things that I love that she's spoken on is that everyone comes in and no one tries to take ownership. Everyone's there working together equally. You have 3 different mayors that are within the county all working together seamlessly. That's kind of unheard of. So it's really incredible to see the kind of work. And to be quite honest, on my end, the support is just to make sure that we're connecting those different counties across the state so that they are able to learn from each other.
I'm gonna add on to that too, Louisiana, because it's 100% not easy. And you know, Michelle said that, you know, we are seeking this kind of level playing field where people aren't duplicating services. And that hasn't gone away. It still happens. But the avenue for communication is now there, where we can say, but wait a minute, you know, you're doing this and they're doing this, and couldn't we maybe do that together? And there's going to be pushback. There's always pushback. But it opens the door to even the possibility of having that conversation, to say, to put the little bug in their ear to think about it and say, well, you know, maybe it would be better if we partnered with that other organization to, you know, have it at a bigger facility, or be able to draw more merchants or more activities. So it's not easy. And I would never want us to put it off that it is easy, and it's continually having to have sometimes very difficult conversations with people. But you know, like Nicole said, we're pushing that relationship piece so strongly, and she and I both have such a heart for our community and a heart for the people that live here with us, that we continue to have those hard conversations because we want it to be better.
Thank you so much. And that's one thing. I had the pleasure to visit Cocke County, Tennessee last year. And that was impressive, the relationships, how you all work together for the same benefit. There's no competition. So that's great. I do have a question specifically for either Nicole or Jennifer from C5. We have, what is the practical advice you will give other organizations working with food security specifically to replicate or to work with a similar population?
I'm going to let Nicole take this one.
Okay. Can you repeat that one more time, Louisiana?
Of course. Yes. I'm trying to read the Q&As, and I'm so sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
What is a piece of practical advice you will give to other organizations working with food insecurity, to combat food insecurity?
From what I have seen and everything that I have done, trying to building the relationships for them to work together for one purpose, that's the main key. If we work together for one purpose, that's another mouth fed. That's another child thriving. That's another child succeeding. That's another family winning. In my eyes, that is practical. It's what makes sense. And just like I said, as far as linking the bread resource to the school system, now if a child can get meat and they can get hamburger meat and they can get hot dogs, they need buns, they need bread. So that goes hand in hand, and then they can have a whole meal, you know, maybe a bag of chips to throw with that, and then they have a meal, you know, a healthy tomato. And that's another thing, our community garden, where they can get fresh fruits and vegetables, they can get tomatoes, they can get cucumbers, they can get, you know, all those fresh fruits and vegetables that are so much needed to be nutritious. And so as this community garden keeps growing, again, next year, as you know, we've all obviously harvested everything for this year, but as it keeps growing, more and more people are going to know about it, and more people are going to be able to come and use and access it and get what they need. No questions asked whatsoever. That's what's amazing about this community garden. And as Jennifer mentioned, having so many family partners involved in it that has put their hand in the work, that know it's there, that can tell their families, hey, I know of somewhere you can get fresh fruits and vegetables. So again, just building relationships, working together with all our community partners, and the outreach.
I'd like to say a little something there. I'm sorry if that's okay.
No, go for it.
I was just going to say that, Nicole, that, you know, you got to put egos aside, and everybody's got to work together and have that desire. But sometimes you have to understand that not everybody is on board. And Nicole did run into that issue. And as her advisor, you know, she tried again, and that's how I know all this about her, but she tried again and was turned away again. One of them, she never did break through, but one she did, who came around and said, you know what, I like you, I like what you're doing, and I want to help. And that's what I would say. To replicate the work that's being done, you have to be willing to not quit, not give up, and put yourself aside. And I think those are all important aspects.
That's a perfect segue too, Crystal, because I was going to say, don't be afraid to hear no, because you're going to hear no, and to ask in like the most unexpected places for help, because just some places make sense to ask for help, and so you do, and then you hear no. But if you just open it up to the broader community, we had a food drive last month for National Hunger Month, and we had a manufacturing facility collecting food for us, and I would have never thought to reach out to them directly and say, hey, would you do this? But when we did the all call to the community to say who can step up, who can help in this work, they came to us, and it was beautiful, and it was unexpected, and those things are going to happen. But you can't be afraid to put it out there and go in with a specific ask to people.
I absolutely agree. And I'll add one other thing to this is Nicole won't say it, but I'm pretty sure she had quite a few pairs of shoes that were worn out completely. Because talk about boots on the ground and making sure people knew what you were doing. She was at every event. She was at community events. She was at places that you would think, well, I'm not exactly sure why, but that's how she made connections, and being willing to hear no and saying, that's okay. That's okay. How can I still help? So making sure that the image that was out there was an image that everybody knew and knew what they were trying to accomplish. And then also, I really appreciate that the work that's done there in Cocke County, when they're reaching out to partners, they're not reaching out with an ask that is so far removed from what they're already doing. More often than not, it's already something that they're doing. It's a hat they already have to put on a regular basis. So I think that that is another really important piece of this puzzle is you go to someone, they could have passion all day long, but if they don't have the capacity to take on something else, they just don't have it. Whereas if you can find someone that already is doing it or has the capacity to take on a little bit more, you're going to see just much better results. And I think that the work that's being done there in Cocke County and those connections that were made by Nicole and by Jennifer and the team, it shows in that way.
I'm going to add to that and say, I can call any of those partners right now, food pantries, food banks, and say, even with them being closed, I've built a relationship where I can say, hey, I need an emergency food box. And they'll say, I'll meet you there. So they're meeting me where I am, and I'm meeting the families where they are. And that's a win.
Definitely a win. And like Michelle mentioned, is keep trying, having that capacity. And sometimes when I hear what you all do for the family, specifically in Cocke County, I say, how did they do it? There's so many challenges, specifically transportation. That's the first one that comes to my mind. Do you have any other specific challenges that you see in the community related directly or indirectly to food security?
I can answer that. Along with transportation being number one, jobs. A lot of people here travel outside of Cocke County for work. If they don't have transportation, finding a job to make a good living here is hard sometimes, because the ones that do have jobs here, they can't employ everybody in the county, right? So a lot of people drive outside of the county for work, and just having jobs to make enough money to support their family is sometimes a struggle here, along with transportation.
Right. Thank you so much,
I-
Nicole. Oh, go ahead,
I-
Michelle. course.
Yeah, I also think about just food deserts in general. We're lucky and fortunate that they're in Newport. There is access to grocery stores with healthy foods. But in some of our areas that are further out, the further out you get from town, the less access you have to those stores that are carrying those fresh fruits and vegetables, those good proteins. And so I definitely think that comes into play as well. Sometimes they might have transportation, but it's a 45-minute drive to a grocery store, and then the gas that it takes to get there as well.
That's right. The gas prices are top of the hill. And one thing that it caught my attention when visiting the C5 online, the website, is how you think about sustainability, about the future for these families. So can you tell me a little bit more of how do you replace food security with food independence?
So I know Nicole touched on some of that, and it's that educating the next generation. It's offering solutions with community partners that we have for financial counseling that is often free for some of these families to help them, because it's more than just that food need. It's educating the community about what it means to be food insecure, so that they don't think, sometimes they fall into that, well, they're just wanting to live off the government and we shouldn't help people like that. So it's trying to change that mindset that for some of us, we're a paycheck away from a disaster. And we're all, capable of being in horrible situations, and that everyone deserves a chance to get help to get through it. And so that's about having those conversations, is trying to really educate. I mean, educate is a huge gamut of things, but it's finding partners, like Michelle said, that are doing it and saying, hey, we have a need for that. Why don't you come along with us on this journey and help us out? And that's building that capacity, and in turn supporting other organizations that are doing fantastic work.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jennifer. And yes, that's a perfect point, what you mentioned about the future, those education outcomes that you always have in mind to work along with food security. So that comes to my mind, the cookbooks, cooking classes that you all have in all the events that I follow, those pictures on your website. Okay, so I don't see any more questions on here. But for those that are watching the recording, if you have any more questions before the session, feel free to contact us. Anything we would like to add from the speaker side? All right, no problem. Thank you so much. Okay, so thank you for joining our session today. It was my pleasure to work with Cocke County staff members and witness how they engage, listen, learn, and work together with the communities to accelerate the progress and for outcomes to help families with children. Thank you so much.